Chapter 16. 8:25 a.m. Brant found his mind wandering. After what he'd witnessed last night, technically earlier this morning, it amazed him that he could function at all. Sam had been fully recovered this morning. He checked his email, hoping for leads of some kind. He needed progress. He already knew that the stone found in the bedroom of the one victim was a diamond. So the news broadcaster had gotten it right. The police had nothing to go on, no semen or DNA was ever present. The cold cases he'd collected under his serial killer project were similar in that they also lacked forensic evidence. That alone made him wonder if Sam's killer could be the same killer Brant was chasing. It also reminded him that, according to Sam, another woman lay dead waiting to be found. It could be days before this one was called in. He tossed his pen on his desk and glared at the stack of papers waiting his attention. Maybe he should go talk to the colonel instead. See if he could shake loose some details. Shutting down the multiple open tabs on paranormal research on his desktop, he rubbed the bridge of his nose. He'd hardly slept. He'd stayed and tried to doze on either of Sam's couches, both uncomfortable, until it was time to leave for the office. Now fatigue made it hard for him to focus. His cell phone rang, pulling him from his reverie. Hello. Brant leaned forward, reaching for a notepad and the pen. At the familiar voice, he closed his eyes and sighed heavily. Hey, Stefan. Glad to hear from you. The thin voice on the other end sounded tired, but well. How is she? She's fine. Better than I am. That was an understatement. Of course. She took a totally normal trip into the psychic world, and you've just blown your mind. Figures. I find I'm searching for an explanation today. What I saw last night, I'm doubting now in the morning. Also normal. Stefan sighed. Your rational mind refuses to accept what your heart already knows. And what do I do about it? Stefan laughed. You ignore it. You saw what you saw, now let it go. The irony in his voice was hard to miss. If you stay with her, it won't be the last time you get to experience something on the wild side. Brant's mouth widened. It's been a little nuts already. I have to admit. She's an interesting woman. Is that all you can say? Interesting? Absolutely. A heavy, amused pause filled the air. What would you call her? Brant shifted uncomfortably in his computer chair. He didn't know what to call her at this point. Unfortunately, his friend had insider knowledge that gave him an advantage. Brant winced, knowing what was coming. Warm laughter filled the air. You haven't figured it out, have you? Any woman who can twist you up like this is, well, definitely interesting. Stefan, he started hesitantly. I was way out of my element last night. She scared the hell out of me. Stefan paused. I have never met anyone with these abilities, so it's new for me too. To have the cuts and the blood is an interesting twist. Wrinkles appeared in Brant's forehead, along with his confusion. Why? Probably less than 1 person in 10 million has her abilities. Maybe even 1 in a billion. Because of that, we don't know much about them. She has more than one gift, by the way. She's incredibly talented. As she learns control, these physical symptoms may change. Could disappear entirely. Brant shook his head. Well, the whole thing left quite an impression. Does it change the way you view her? Stefan's voice reeked with curiosity but not surprise. Brant shifted uncomfortably. I'd like to say no, but I'm not sure that I can. A heavy silence filled the phone line. Take some time and think about this. Particularly take some time to think about this from Sam's point of view. I know. Brant rubbed a hand down his face. God, her life must be hell. That's probably all she has known. Consider the amount of in-depth knowledge she's gleaned about the dark side of humanity. Take into account the amount of disbelief and mockery she's faced, and then consider how different she is from others. None of that will bring her hugs in this world. Kicks, however, are free. Stefan was right. She spent some time in a psych ward. Just under 4 months. Stefan's voice was tinged with weariness. Haven't we all? It's society's answer for the unknown. If she is fully functioning at this stage of her life, she's learned to adapt, to cope, and to hide. All three are required to survive. And she's all alone. Easy to understand, isn't it? You're wondering why you haven't hightailed it for the hills yourself. Brandt couldn't argue that point. He didn't know what the hell he felt about Sam now. She required a little more acceptance and understanding than he had yet to be asked for in a relationship. He was sure he could give that, eventually, should he choose. That was the problem. He just hadn't worked it out in his head yet. Stefan read his mind. If you care at all, watch what you say and do right now. She spent a lifetime under suspicion, receiving disapproval. If you want to be accepted by her, she needs to know that you can handle her gifts. Stefan coughed a couple times. If you decide that you can't handle them, then don't let her know right away. The worst thing you can do today is to walk away. You'd be reinforcing what she's had a lifetime to learn, that she's unacceptable in the eyes of the rest of the world. But that's not true, Brandt protested. Maybe not, but you'd have a hard time convincing her of that. Stefan tried again. Look to her history. It's all there. Fear, distrust, hatred even. No acceptance is handed out for people like her and me. You're different. No, I'm not. It took you time to trust me, as it took me time to trust you. This is the same position you're in with Sam, learning to trust. Remember, it takes time. Brandt was silent. Can someone really live a life like hers? She is. Bald and clear, there was no arguing with the logic. What if I can't? There it was, his secret fear. The fear that had kept him awake all night, as Brandt lay on his couch as she lay opposite on hers. That fear sat stewing in his mind all morning, keeping him from focusing on his job. What if he couldn't accept Sam, couldn't accept the life she led? Stefan's heavy sigh came through the phone. If you can't, you can't. It would surprise me, though. I've certainly pushed the envelope of your beliefs. So what's different this time? This time, I find I'm searching for an anchor, a point of reference. Something to help me place what I witnessed into my belief system, my reality. That is exactly how you felt the first time I spoke to you about a killer on one of your cases. I even told you something similar at the time. Brandt vaguely remembered that time in his life. Was I that bad? Absolutely. You might also remember something you've said to me in the past. You told me that you'd never married because you couldn't see anyone accepting your life. Now you're thinking about rejecting her because you can't accept her life. I'm not rejecting her. And he wasn't. He was rejecting her gift. God, he was an ass. But Stefan continued to talk. Good. Think about this. See how you feel about it all tomorrow. Call me if you need to talk. Stefan hung up after that, leaving Brandt alone with his thoughts. Brandt had seen a lot of things in his life. Police work often demanded finding a way through lies and deceit to arrive at the truth. In this case, the truth stared him in the face. He could no longer doubt what he'd seen. He'd need some time to accept that something so impossible broke all the laws of life as he knew them, and had happened, whether he liked it or not. 11:45 a.m. Not working a normal 9-to-5 Monday to Friday job made for a great week, but damn it, she hated to work on weekends. Peering into the mirror, Sam curled her lip. It's a good thing Brant had left early this morning. She resembled the homeless woman everyone thought she was. Her hair hung lank around her shoulders. If there were any highlights, then they were hidden in the shadows. Pulling a brush through her hair, she didn't have time to wash it, and she ran. She was 10 minutes late. 2 other staff members worked at opening the front office, while Sam started feeding the animals. It must have been a busy day yesterday. She saw several new animals, and Sam's heart bled for each and every one. It took hours to make them comfortable. The hospital was short-handed. Twice she was called away to help the front staff, once with an unruly canine and the second time with a tomcat not interested in having his wayward ways changed. Working with the animals out front helped Sam to see other aspects of the business. Working with the injured animals in the cages gave her a lopsided view. She loved seeing them before they ended up in her care. "Good morning, Sam." Lost in thought, she spun around, almost falling to the floor from her crouching position. "Good morning, Dr. Wascott. How is Soldier doing?" A big grin split her face. The vet stopped, a stunned expression emblazoned on his normally peaceful face. "Soldier is doing wonderfully. He's walking around more and slowly gaining strength. He had his last medicine this morning, and he should be fine now." The doctor moved his head from side to side. "Honestly, Sam, I don't think I've ever seen you this happy. I'm glad the dog is bringing some life into your world." Heat bloomed on her cheeks as she realized she'd been babbling. "Sorry," she muttered. The older man sported a boyish grin. "No problem. It's quite a nice change, actually." Still, she couldn't help a sheepish grin, feeling a little more of her normal reserve drop off. She felt more comfortable with him than she ever had before. "There's a phone call for you, Dr. Wascott." One of the vet assistants walked into the room, smiling. "Good morning, Samantha. How are you today?" Feeling unnaturally peaceful, Sam nodded to the other woman. "I'm fine, thank you." "Good. There's fresh bread, a new grainy recipe from the corner bakery in the lunchroom. Lucy also brought in some fresh creamed honey. Make sure you have some before your shift is over." The idea of fresh baked bread made her mouth water. "Thanks, I'd like to try it." "You're done now. A fresh pot of tea is in there too. Go enjoy." Dr. Wascott nudged Sam's arm before walking out of the room. The treat sounded too irresistible to ignore. Sam slipped into the lunchroom, slightly disappointed to find it empty. With a frown, she considered that. How long had it been since she'd relished company? The bread smelled luscious. A fresh yeasty aroma wafted free as Sam cut off a thick slice. An open canning jar, full of creamy honey, sat on the counter. In the light, the honey had a deep, opaque milkiness to it. Lifting the jar, Sam sniffed the contents. Using the tip of her knife, she tasted a small bit and rolled her eyes as the flavor exploded on her tongue. Oh my God, that was so good. Quickly, Sam slathered the top of her bread with a thick layer, before sitting at the small table with her tea. "It's good, isn't it?" Sam startled in surprise, so lost in the snack that she didn't hear anyone enter. With her mouth full, she could only nod. Lucy grinned, cutting herself a slice. Afterward, finished at the vet's, Sam headed to the library for more research books. From there, it was a quick hop to the grocery store for a couple items. She stood in line, waiting to pay for her purchase. She should have come here earlier and avoided the rush. Crowds gave her a headache. She reached up to rub her temples when she felt it. A long finger of evil reached out and brushed her soul. The grocery store disappeared, the line of people morphed into a small, tidy room. The smell of medicine and aftershave assailed her nose. A gruff cough poured from her chest. Sam bent to rub her sore leg, surprised to see a cane in her right hand and plaid slippers on her feet. Her hand went to her chest as she shuffled over to an easy chair, stiff movements jarring her spine with each step. Evil surrounded her, him. Only she didn't think the older man in the slippers knew about it. "Hey, old man." The male body she inhabited jerked in surprise, turning somewhat awkwardly. The other man had on a huge old lady's gardening hat with flowers, and, Christ, something that resembled a bird on top. A silk paisley scarf wrapped around the lower portion of his face, obscuring all but his dark, voracious eyes. Sam's stomach dropped. She knew that gaze. She wanted to close her eyes, but they weren't her own. She wanted to jump free, but she was tied to this soul. "Who are you, and what are you doing in my room?" "Just taking care of details." The mark of a professional is in giving every detail the same level of attention, no matter how small. The voice was muffled and rasping. Sam knew she wouldn't identify it now or later. "What do you want?" the old man asked querulously. "Get out of my room." Sam wanted to run from the room, to force the old man to move toward the door. She had no control over his limbs or tongue. She could only watch, paralyzed with horror, knowing what was to come. She tried to catalog the details for later. "Oh, I'm leaving, Colonel. But I'll be back. You, on the other hand, won't be." Pain exploded at the crown of Sam's head, colors danced, blinding her. She groaned. The carpet rushed up to meet her, as she collapsed to the floor. Darkness swirled, coaxing her into the center of the morass, before becoming an all-encompassing shroud, then blinking out altogether. Sam hung suspended between time and reality, not moving one way or another. Caught. Lost. At the last minute, Sam heard a faint voice weaving through the darkness. "Serves you right, you old bastard." Then the darkness was complete. "Excuse me." Sam was nudged gently and then again not so gently. "Excuse me? Are you all right?" Sam came to, woozy and still in a half-blind state. She could hardly focus. A woman's concerned face, blurry and of an odd size, came into partial focus. "Yes." Her tongue had a fuzzy, thick feeling, and if that was her voice, something was wrong. Very wrong. "You don't look it." The woman spoke bluntly, tugging Sam to a chair nearby. The grocery basket was removed from Sam's arms, and she was gently pushed into the chair. Sam's eyes went black with pain. This wasn't transition, it wasn't reality either. It seemed a step in between, still painful with any movement, yet no bleeding or other physical manifestations as far as she could tell. It would be a couple moments before she'd check. "Are you a diabetic? An epileptic?" Sam shook her head slowly. "No," she whispered. "I'm fine." The woman didn't appear convinced. "Do you want to just sit here for a few minutes?" She rose, taking several steps away. "I can return in a moment or two, and see how you are doing?" She stopped her escape. "Or I could call for an ambulance." Sam eyed the woman again. Her eyes were huge with worry. Sam closed her own for a moment, then reopened them again. The process worked much better this time. She gave her a tiny, gentle smile. "Thank you," she murmured. "I'll just sit here until I feel better." "Okay." Relief washed over the woman's face. "As long as you are feeling better, then I'll leave. I'll check on you in a little bit." Sam said thanks, and couldn't hold back a sigh of relief when the woman left. Sam really didn't feel well. Yet neither could she say that she felt really bad. She couldn't explain in a way anyone would understand. Whatever had just happened had drained her energy. She needed rest, and soon. First, she needed to get out of the public's eye. Surveying the area around her, she couldn't find her basket of groceries anywhere. They could be sitting close, waiting for her, not that she had the energy to look or to care. She'd shop later. For now, she'd be happy with getting to her truck. Staying upright was a challenge. Using the wall for stability, Sam slipped through the double doors to the parking lot. Her truck was somewhere in the middle. She closed her eyes and leaned against the outside wall. The fresh air helped. Several deep breaths later, her eyesight had returned to normal. If she waited just one more minute, she might be able to walk there like a normal person. Once at her truck, she struggled inside, shutting the door with more force than necessary. She took another deep breath and evaluated her state of health. Most functions had returned to normal. She didn't know about her speech. But the pain was gone. Achiness remained, yet that was livable. Her motor functions had returned to normal. She pulled out her cell phone and dialed Brant. "Hello." "Brant." She winced. No, her voice wasn't quite normal. "What's wrong?" His voice had no problem, it damn near split her eardrum. She held the phone away from her ear, groaning as her head pounded. "Don't yell, please." He modulated his tone. "Then tell me what's wrong." "You sound terrible." "I'm just coming out of a vision." Sam coughed gently. This one was weird. This time some old man was hit over the head. "What?" Sam could almost see Brant's brows furrowed with concentration. "Did you see the attacker?" "He was disguised as an old woman. The old man knew him. I think I've been at this place before. Not the same room maybe, but something similar." "Sam, I have another call coming in. I'll call you right back." "Where are you?" "I'm sitting in the shopping center across from work. While waiting in line at the grocery store, the vision damn near crippled me." "But you're okay now?" "Yes. Call me soon." Sam rang off. She rested her head against the side window and closed her eyes.